All right. Thank you to everybody for coming out here. I am Dave. I'm the guy who does the Judging for the Win YouTube channel. This presentation will be up on that channel, and if you're interested in seeing it, that is where you would be able to do that. Um, how is everybody doing today? Hopefully, having a great time. I am doing this presentation, and it is probably going to be a little bit different from some of the other presentations that you've maybe seen me give. So, as a little bit of a disclaimer, this presentation is dealing with opinions and not facts. So there's going to be substantially fewer CR citations at the bottom of the screen backing up stuff that I said. Also, if you've looked at the title, Burnout is maybe going to be used in a little bit more colloquial of a sense, but matching up with what people typically mean when they say that term in the judge program. However, if you are in need of mental health advice, then please contact a properly credentialed professional, which I am not. I'm just some guy on the internet. So with that being the case, we can get into a little bit of the important discussion here. What is burnout? And I think, like I said, this is something that colloquially kind of gets thrown around a lot, especially in the judge program. But I want to kind of narrow it down and put together a framework for people to hopefully understand if burnout is happening in their judge career, and if so, what they can do to prevent it. So for starters, a couple of the things that you sometimes hear referred to as burnout, but I'm specifically not going to be referring to, would be something like, maybe sometimes you see a situation where a judge steps away from the program because they started a family, or they started a new job that has like some more demands on their time. That isn't burnout. That is, in my opinion, at least, not burnout. That is attrition. That is not burnout, though. That's just somebody who has a limited amount of resources, recognizing that they have a limited amount of resources and allocating the resources that they were putting towards judging into something else. So that would not be an example of burnout. Also, it's not burnout if you like feel bad, right? Like general instances of people feeling bad happens all the time, right? Like if you DQ a 12-year-old kid because they didn't realize that rolling dice was against the rules back in the times when that was a DQ, that was a feel bad, right? When you like give your friend a game loss and that takes him out of the top 8 because it was his third unrelated instance of looking at extra cards due to a courser of crew fix malfunction, that is also not burnout. It feels bad, but it's not burnout, right? Like those are like single isolated incidents that make you feel bad. It's not something that's a more sustained systemic issue, which is what I would consider burnout to be. So what is burnout? Well, I would say that you might be experiencing burnout if you're feeling stressed out instead of excited in the days before a big tournament, or maybe feeling unmotivated to participate in a project that you once enjoyed. Or maybe this one might surprise some people because it doesn't typically get thought of as burnout, but I consider it to be at least related or a part of the same root issues that cause burnout, which would be suffering for imposter syndrome. And if that is the case, if you're experiencing any of those sorts of things, those might be burnout of the type that this presentation is going to be discussing. So observe the common trend where you used to have some sort of a positive emotion, and it gets replaced by a negative emotion. So we see like stress, apathy, and insecurity getting replaced in where excitement, motivation, and confidence used to be. And so those are all examples of the type of burnout that hopefully this presentation will help you identify and hopefully work through. So what is the conventional wisdom around burnout? And I have talked to a lot of judges about this topic, and this is like the conventional wisdom that I have seen like the most often. And like it's really shocking, like both like how often you see this and also like how uniform it is. Because I've really never heard people talk about burnout and like say something other than some variant of what you see on the slide right now, that burnout is caused by too much hard work. How much has anybody heard, people say in the program like, oh, don't judge too much or you'll get burned out, right? I think I've heard people say like several times to several new judges, especially people who like get really involved in the program early on. They've said some variant of this conventional wisdom phrase here. But I want to invite everybody to kind of challenge the conventional wisdom and think a little bit. Does that really make sense? All right. Does the proposition of burnout is caused by too much hard work really make sense? Because like if you think about it, there's lots of judges out there in the program who are literally judging or doing like other judge magic, related activities as a full-time job for years, even decades in some cases. And, those people are still going strong, right? So like if that's the case, if those people are able to do so much hard work and not get burned out, then why not anybody else? Right? Like, does that make sense to anybody else? No, in my opinion, it does not. In my opinion, that is, that seems to me like the conventional wisdom is wrong, or at least a little bit misleading, right? So I am going to propose an alternative explanation. Hard work may wear down body, but not the spirit. In order to wear down the spirit, we need something else. So Judge Dave is proposing that burnout is not caused by too much hard work. Burnout is caused by unrewarding hard work. Okay, and so this idea is like so important that I put it in like bigger text than I put on all the other, slides. Just to really hammer home what the main thesis statement of this presentation is, right? And so, in order to unpack that a little bit more, I wanted to introduce, as far as I'm aware, this is like the first time, there's probably like a proper psychology, more refined version of this model, but this is the model that I, in my personal life have found to be really, really good job at explaining the observations that I and other people around me have expressed about burnout. So here's the basic idea is that like you start out with some effort, right? You start out with doing some work, doing some hard work, and then after that, your hard work leads to some sort of an achievement or an accomplishment. All right? And so after that, because you achieved something, you get some sort of satisfaction. And the satisfaction isn't necessarily, in your mind only. Like there's other kinds of material rewards and other stuff that you can get that leads to satisfaction. But finally, the last part of the cycle is that whatever rewards or satisfaction you get out of your achievement turns into motivation that helps you put in some future, hard effort. So that is the cycle that normally would be taking place. For someone who's not burned out, you see this cycle happening where effort leads to achievement, which leads to satisfaction. And I'll call this the ease cycle after the first letters of all these words. Burnout is what happens when one or more of the links of this ease cycle are broken. Okay, so let's take a look at some specific examples of what that might look like. So for example, if we broke this link between effort and achievement, that would be corresponding to a case, and we've seen stuff like this happen all the time, right? Who here has ever put in effort to something and not achieved the result that they were hoping that they would, right? A lot of people, right? Everybody can probably think of a time in their life when that happened. And that this is an example of the ease cycle breaking down. And if this happened to you, you probably felt a little bit burned out on whatever topic. By the way, this ease cycle, it's not just for judging. It works for like other types of burnout that you might be experiencing too in other areas of your life. So yeah, one common scenario that this happens to people in the judge program is that they're trying to advance in level, right? So I know a lot of level 2 judges who are working really hard to become level 3. And it's no secret that a lot of the people who start with that don't end up making it, right? So that would be one very common example in the program of this sort of breakdown in the ease cycle. So when stuff like that happens, then the excitement that you used to have for like achieving that goal, when people start on a goal, they're always really excited. They're always like fantasizing about how great it's going to be once they finally get the result. But then like eventually, if you get to, this sort of a break in the ease cycle, then that feeling of excitement gets replaced with frustration, or maybe even something worse, like feelings of worthlessness or inadequacy or failure. And so those are examples of one breakdown in the ease cycle. The next cycle breakdown that we're going to look at is you get the achievement, like your hard work pays off and you end up getting your results that you were hoping for. But the achievement that you got doesn't give you the same satisfaction as what you need. Now, it might not be the case that you don't get any satisfaction at all. But maybe the satisfaction that you get is not in line with the achievement that you got. Okay, so here's an example of that. Like when people start out and they go to their first like big tournament, who here, back in the days when GPs and like SCG I guess is starting back up, but the people who have been to those events, try and remember like your very first one, right? Like when you're for my first Grand Prix, I was so excited. I was so happy to be there. I was jumping off the walls and it was crazy. There was all these judges, so chaotic too. It really feels like an achievement in itself to like just get through one of those events, right? And it is. It is. It is an achievement to like actually get through your first Grand Prix. It's a challenging thing. But here's the thing. After a while, then you get to a situation where you've done enough Grand Prix or enough big tournaments in general that like it's not exciting enough, right? It's not your reward that you get for going to a Grand Prix. It's not just like, wow, I get to be there. When I was in engineering school, one of my design professors told me about like how they have in the automotive industry, they have this thing called like the excitement features and standard features. So for example, if anybody remembers, if you tried to buy a car like 30-ish years ago, they didn't all have air conditioning, right? Like if you were going to buy a car a few like 30-ish years ago, air conditioning would have been like a luxury feature. It would have been like an option that you could get. Okay, like nowadays, would anybody here buy a car that didn't have air conditioning? Of course not. I don't even think that there is such a thing as a car that doesn't have air conditioning, that's made like, recently, right? So like that's the same sort of thing. Like the excitement features gradually turn into expected features as the life cycle of the product goes on. And in the same way, the excitement attraction that you get to working big events turns into like, expected, or like, it's not exciting anymore. It's just like, that's what it is. And so that is another sort of way that you can get this situation where the achievement of like working a big event doesn't bring you the same kind of satisfaction as what it did before. And it's not just for big events too. Like who here remembers PPTQs, right? Like back in the days of PPTQs, they started out having gigantic attendance numbers, and then people gradually realized that like, okay, after like the 5th or 6th one, it's not as exciting anymore, so we're not going to go to every single one. And so after several seasons of PPTQs, the excitement level had gone so down that the attendance was super low. So like players can have the same sort of situation happen to them too. And of course, judges judging PPTQs definitely know what it feels like to work enough of them that they're not getting the excitement or the satisfaction after working one of them as what they used to. And if someone in the chat mentioned it did sound a little bit like RCQs, and it turns out that PPTQs were not so long ago that everybody forgot all about how they worked. And so it turns out that like the RCQs basically skipped the initial step where everyone was super excited for them. And in, at least my area of the world, they've jumped right to the part where the attendance numbers are pretty low and people aren't really engaged with them very well. And that can translate into the judges' situation also. So, okay, finally, we're going to talk about like the last breakdown, which would be like, you put forth the hard work, you got the achievement, and you had great satisfaction from the achievement. You got like the mental rewards are there, but that doesn't inspire future hard work. Okay? So there's actually like a couple of ways that this can happen. One common place where you see this type of burnout is in judges who have recently achieved a goal and they don't know where to go from there. So for example, like a judge might work really hard to reach level 2, even though they have like no interest in mentoring others or working large events. In normal situations, that judge would be perfectly suited for a level 1 role. But for whatever reason, that judge like had a goal to become level 2. So they put in the effort and they got the achievement. They finally made level 2, and they are going to get like some satisfaction from doing that, and they want to work on some stuff. But the problem is that they don't have like a clear direction to go. The positive energy has no clear path to get channeled into, and it'll get dissipated without bearing any more fruit. And so who here has ever like seen a judge have that sort of situation happen before, right? So if you find yourself feeling lost or clueless or uncertain about your spot in the program, you may be ask yourself if you're experiencing this type of burnout. Another situation happens when there's like a positive psychological reward, but it gets poisoned or blunted or co-opted by other negative emotions, rendering future hard work unappealing. Imposter syndrome is a great example of this. It blocks the positive emotions that are normally granted by achievement, and it makes them feel undeserved. Disillusionment is another, either on a personal or a program-wide level. Sometimes we see magic or judging in a negative light, and that can keep accomplishments in those areas from feeling worthwhile. In the same way, if you have a disagreement with a friend or a colleague, that can also cause this sort of burnout by reducing the psychological reward that you get from participating in an activity that the two of you have in common. And so those are like the 3 different kinds of burnout, or at least the 3 different ways that the cycle can break down. And they're not all mutually exclusive, by the way. Like, just because you're suffering from like this sort of a breakdown, it doesn't mean you couldn't also be breaking down here or here. And in fact, it definitely does, in my experience, make it more likely that you're going to have like breakdowns in other areas as well if you have a breakdown in one of the areas. Right? So, okay, let's take a little look at how do we beat burnout. And again, we're going to start with the conventional wisdom, right? The conventional wisdom, and this is something that I've heard a million times, is you take a break and then you come back, right? And so that's definitely like advice that people love to throw around when it comes to burnout. And, if your original like starting point for burnout is what we talked about on the previous conventional wisdom slide, that burnout is caused by like too much hard work, then, I guess this does kind of make sense as like a natural kind of advice that you can give. And it really is like in my experience, like a catch-all, kind of advice that people tend to give. But as some people are mentioning in the chat, there's a couple of holes in this theory too. One of them is that a lot of the people who follow this conventional wisdom, they take a break and then they don't come back. Or they take a break and then they come back, but like they still aren't back to their like original level of enthusiasm and excitement about stuff, right? So like, again, I'm going to make the bold claim that the conventional wisdom is wrong, or again, at least lacking, right? So I'm not saying that it can't help to take a break and then come back later, but I really think that we're not really addressing the root cause. The real problem is if we're experiencing burnout, then the problem is that we've got an issue with the ease cycle, right? There was something wrong with the effort or the achievements or the satisfaction cycle that is keeping us from progressing to the next stage in that cycle. And so if we just walk away and we don't fix the problem that we're having with the ease cycle, then of course we're still going to be burned out when we come back because we didn't fix the underlying issue. Okay, so this is the real thing that we need to be focused on if you're experiencing burnout, is identifying where your breakdown is in the ease cycle and getting a real long-term solution for that instead of just like, walking away, hoping the problem fixes itself and then coming back. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the stuff that we can do. And I gave the example earlier about if you had like an effort that wasn't leading to an achievement. So this stands this breakdown. We talked about how like if you set a goal, you wanted to achieve your goal, but if you like had a bunch of time go by and you didn't get you didn't achieve your goal, you're starting to feel burned out. Well, this is the reason why like pretty much all the like goals, all the like making smart goals and whatever presentations and advice say that you should take your goal, your big goal, and break it up into smaller chunks, right? The reason for that is because if you have a big goal, then you're not going to accomplish your big goal right away. And it's very likely that you're going to get to a point where you've been working on the goal for long enough that you start to get burned out. But if you break down the goal into smaller chunks, then that gives you more ability to get to the next chunk before you get burned out. And every time you hit one of those chunks, that's an achievement that can give you some satisfaction, that can inspire some more effort, that gets you to move towards that next chunk. Right? So that's that's my advice for if you're feeling burnout in this stage, is you need to appreciate your small victories as you really should. And milestones and checking boxes is a great boost as well. Exactly right, from the chat. Another thing that I think is very helpful along this front is journaling and self-reviews. Right? So who remembers the self-review from the level 3 process, right? Like, that's not just for level 3s. And in fact, like, one of the reasons I think that it's important for level 3s and highest, the highest level judges in the program to do self-reviews is because when they're working for goals, like, they've already figured out all the easy stuff, right? Like, if you're a level 3, you already know how to do all the basic stuff. So by definition, any improvements that you're going to see is going to be a lot more of the incremental long-term kind of things. And so, like, having this journaling or this self-review that you can reflect back on helps remind you of how much distance you actually have covered. And that helps you get, more effort. It helps you appreciate your efforts are leading to the achievement after all, instead of like what you might be thinking that you're basically just wasting your time and get frustrated. So the next stage of the cycle would be the achievement to satisfaction step. And so, like we talked about before, that one of the problems that happened is when you work events, the like amount of work that you have to do hits a certain minimum, right? Like when you're working a large or small event, whatever the like minimum amount of work you have to do to still do a good job of working that event, there's some floor to the amount of effort that you have to put in. On the other hand, like, there isn't a floor on how much satisfaction you get. So like your first GP, you got a big psychological reward. After enough GPs, you get like a pretty minor psychological reward probably, and whatever the check, the like $X100 check at the end of the event. And that's basically what you're down to in the worst case scenario. So what we see here is it's not really plausible to decrease the amount of work. So we would need to increase the amount of reward or satisfaction that we're getting from working those events. And so that is like how you do. Now, in contrast, project involvement actually does kind of have like some ways that you could decrease the amount of effort that it takes to do stuff. You could automate your project. You could delegate to other people. You could reduce your work requirements by being more efficient. Those are all ways that you could keep your project output the same, but like be putting less effort into it. So for events, it doesn't really work that way. There's like a minimum amount of effort you have to put into every event that you work, but you still can increase your satisfaction. And so, like, one of the best ways to do this would be trying new things. And it's no accident that like lots of judges who are long-term veterans of the program have done everything. It's because trying new things is one of the best ways to increase your satisfaction, because like if you're an expert at something, you don't have to think about it to do the job. But if it's your first time doing prize wall, or your first time doing setup and teardown, or your first time doing one of the admin roles like a scorekeeper, like you have to think a lot more, and you have to put a lot more into the event, and therefore you're going to be getting a lot out of the event, a lot more out of the event. And so that's another way that you can increase your reward. Another very important benefit that you get from trying new things is that you, in general, people are very poor at evaluating how much they are going to enjoy something. So for my own personal benefit, when I first started writing, I did not think that I would like it. I wrote some articles, and I thought it would take forever. I thought I wouldn't be very good at it. I thought I would just hate it. But I tried it out because like I thought it would be a thing that I could try out, a new thing that I could be doing. And definitely it took forever. Definitely when I look back at some of my first articles, I wasn't very good at it. But I grossly underestimated how much satisfaction that I would get from writing articles or producing content that people all over the world would be able to consume and benefit from. And so there's really no way to know how much satisfaction you're going to get until you like actually make the plunge and try it out. And so I'll be talking a little bit more about that in a later slide in this presentation. But that is something that like, an example from my own personal judge career. So, okay, finally, let's talk a little bit about the bridge from satisfaction to more effort. And that's, we talked a little bit about how that generally got caused by there's some sort of a barrier that keeps the satisfaction and rewards that you got from putting in more hard effort, or from inspiring you to do more hard effort. And so really there's no shortcut to this one. You have to break down the barrier. Okay, that's the only way that you can get from satisfaction to effort is if you break the barrier that's poisoning your your satisfaction from turning into more effort. So sometimes what'll happen is it's obvious what the barrier is, but a lot of the times it's not. A lot of the time it's more subtle, and you have to really do some serious personal reflection in order to figure out what the actual reason that your satisfaction isn't leading to more hard work. Sometimes it's easy again, but sometimes it's not. So be courageously honest with yourself when you're evaluating the cause of your burnout. No one else needs to see the analysis. It's just important to have good data as a starting point. One of the things that I mentioned is sometimes you have like a falling out with a colleague. Or somebody who was really involved in the judge program. They might like see some information about the judge program that puts judging or magic in more of a negative light. And so in that sort of situation, you would come up with a situation where I think the actual answer to it is the conventional wisdom. Time does heal all wounds, and if you are away from the negative situation, like someone said in the chat earlier, having a way to take that information out of the short-term memory and into the long-term memory and process it, that's the only way to move forward. And so in that case, anecdotally, judges that I've talked to who did suffer from that sort of burnout were able to return to an active and high-quality role to the judge program after they took a short break to process those emotions. So that is one situation where the conventional wisdom is actually helpful. So, okay. We talked about what burnout is. We talked about how to identify it. We talked about what causes it, and we talked about like some ways that you can hopefully reverse the course of burnout in your judge career or otherwise. So now it's time to move on to like the last kind of segment of my presentation, which is how do you prevent burnout? And this is another one where we're going to look at the conventional wisdom first, except, oops, looks like we got a 404 results not found on this one. As far as I'm aware, there isn't really like any solid conventional wisdom for how do you prevent burnout. The conventional wisdom is, well, don't judge too hard. right? Like the thing we were talking about before about how the conventional wisdom is if you judge too much, then you'll get burned out. And, I guess the conventional wisdom here is, don't work too hard or you'll get burned out. And if you do feel burned out, then that means you were working too hard. So there isn't really like any actual like advice to prevent burnout. That's the conventional wisdom. It's pace yourself. So okay, maybe we'll see if we can do a little bit better than that. How do you prevent burnout? By judging for the win. That's exactly right. Of course, that kind of like begs a question. First of all, nobody goes out when they're winning, right? Who here has ever been playing like, and it's 1 a.m., an hour or 2 hours past your bedtime, and you're playing, you got to play one more game so you can go out on a win. And then you finally like end up untilting yourself by getting that victory. And then what do? You queue up immediately afterwards because now you can't go out on a you can't. First of all, you can't go out on a loss because that's terrible. But people don't want to go out on a win because they're winning and they have that momentum now. So if you're winning, that means that you're very likely to not be burned out. And so you see that with like pro athletes a lot too. A lot of pro athletes don't retire when they're on top. A lot of pro athletes will wait until they've conclusively been shown to not be in their prime anymore, and then they will retire. So the same sort of thing. Like when people are winning, they're not getting burned out. And so, okay, that kind of like begs another question here. What does winning look like for a judge? Right, and this is a big question. It's such a fundamental and foundational question that I actually named my entire channel after it. So what does winning look like for a judge? And unfortunately, like in a lot of other games, it's a little bit more obvious. So what I say is winning is when you use your resources and your understanding of the system to get more of what you want. And if you really think about it, like who here has ever played a game before, right? Like probably most of you. So pretty much every game that there is, winning is what happens when you use your resources and your understanding of the system to get more of what you want. So let's take a look. Sometimes it's easy to identify, right? Like, what you want is spelled out clearly in the rules. You've got like, maybe you want to score a lot of points, or maybe you want to score very few points, or maybe you want to perform some sort of like task that was predetermined by the rules of the game, or maybe you want to perform one of several tasks that were pre-specified by the rules of the game. And so that is, in fact, the best case scenario is when you can just look in the rules and see what winning is. Unfortunately, like for judging, it's a little bit less clear cut. So winning is when you use your resources and understanding of the system to get more of what you want. So for a judge, you have to do two things. First, you have to figure out what you want, and then you have to get it. And the figuring out what you want is actually like deceptively difficult to do. And this is another one of those cases where the conventional wisdom is kind of doing us dirty. Because a lot of the time, like judges have like this kind of credo that says what we're supposed to want, right? Like who here has like, seen someone who says, I want to go to level 2, and there's like absolutely no discernible reason why this person would want to go to level 2, right? Who here has seen a judge like work towards some goal, but that goal is not like something that is likely to make them feel better. It's not like aligned with their interests at all. And so like the judge program has a great way of, trying to force its like, group ethos on individual judges. And that really hurts in an area where individuality is so important, because winning really does look different for every judge. And so you really can't go based off of like somebody else's pattern to say this is what I should be doing as a judge. Okay, so getting what you want is not necessarily straightforward, but it is kind of outside of the scope of what I'm wanting to talk about today. There's lots of presentations about setting goals and reaching them. We talked a little bit in the chat about like SMART goals, wise goals. Basically, that is what you would be doing if you have already decided what it is that you want. Is you would be using those kinds of techniques to set goals and then achieve them. A personal mentor will have better personal advice on how to get what you want once you've decided what that is. So really the question that I want to focus on is what do you want? Okay? And so it turns out that that's going to be one of those cases where it really is individualistic. And just like Mr. Morden found out, everybody has a different answer to that question. And if you want to be a good mentor to somebody, like what we were talking about in the previous slide, part of that, in fact, a big part of that, is helping the person you're mentoring figure out what they want so that you can help them get more of it. And so, it doesn't matter if what you want is like vengeance or glory or, something else entirely. That's the whole crux of what mentorship is. And so now, of course, we have to figure out, we kind of kicked the can down the street a couple of times. The question now is, okay, what do you want? Well, how can you figure out what you want, right? And so one of the tools that I think in the toolbox, one of the tools I think that has worked the best for me personally in this situation is looking at things through the lens of the magic color pie, right? So that the reason that I have the back of the magic card on here is to remind everybody, there's 5 colors, and back when the game was a little bit less power crept than it is now, they used to use those colors philosophies when they were deciding what cards could do or not do. And so it turns out that if you think of yourself as a magic character and then try to imagine what color you would be if you were a magic player, what kind of motivations would you have? Catching cheaters, maybe it would be more of a white aligned kind of a thing. Self-improvement, it would be more of a blue kind of thing. People tend to think that the Magic the Gathering blue color, it would be the one that's most associated with a judge that's reading the CR all the time, or trying to learn how to do stuff. The end goal isn't knowledge. Knowledge is a tool that's used for self-improvement. Blue is actually the magic color that's the strongest tied to self-improvement. There's an old joke that says that magic judges is a cult of self-improvement people who happen to work at magic tournaments. The people who would say that would be that's a very blue judge aligned thing to say. Sometimes people are judges for personal profit. Sometimes people think, hey, I could go to this magic tournament and I could make $200 for doing something that is no more stressful of a use of my time than what I would normally be doing, where I would make $0. Or hey, if I'm a judge, I have an opportunity to do stuff that gets me shiny magic cards that help that help me foil out my EDH deck. Red is aligned with the traveling, adventure, trying new things. Those are all red kind of ethos things that might be motivations for someone who's red aligned. And the green mages would be more involved with their community. Their joy is in finding other people that they share a hobby with or some other kind of connection with. So those are all different aspects of judging that might appeal to different people depending on their personal motivations and their personality. Now I'm not going to say that this is the end all be all, right? Because it turns out that everybody, whatever color alignment you are, you have to filter that through your personal personality too. So your motivations might change based on your personality and what sorts of things you personally like or do not like doing, which is again one of the reasons why I like to recommend that you try new things as part of your judge journey. So for example, if you're a white judge, white aligned judge, then maybe mentorship for you would be something that's important to do. And I want to mentor other judges because I understand it's my duty as a more experienced judge to pass on what I've learned to less experienced judges, because that way there will be a continuing crop of more experienced judges. If you're a blue judge, you would also probably be interested in mentoring because that is helping another person improve themselves, and it's also helping you learn more about the fundamentals that is, helping you become a good teacher. So you're improving yourself also. Black aligned judges would also be very interested in mentorship because they can help another judge into the program see their side of the world and help shape the program in that way. Maybe the person that I'm mentoring will become someone influential, and that will be someone that will be good to know later. Or maybe it would be a good idea to help some of the people in this program, because that way my personal workload is going to be a little bit lighter. A red judge would be very interested in mentoring people because they are passionate about the game and they would want to share their passion with other people. And the green judge would be interested in mentorship because as a community-focused individual, they would be very excited about growing the community for its own sake. And so it turns out that like the color pie helps you figure out your motivations, but you have to like filter that motivation through your personality in order to really see whether it's going to be something that you like or not. And again, remember, as I said before, it's very difficult for people to assess how much they are going to enjoy something if they haven't actually personally done that thing in the past. And so really the key takeaway that I want everybody to focus on here is, when you do something in the judge program or in your life, try to figure out what it is that you liked about that thing. If you do something and feel good about it, try and identify where that good feeling is coming from, because that'll give you a little glimpse of insight into your motivations, and hopefully having a better insight into your motivations is going to help you in the future to figure out like things that you could do that are well aligned with your motivations. So, in conclusion, what is the like major takeaways of the presentation that I want everyone to come out with? Burnout is not caused by too much hard work. It's caused by unrewarding hard work. Then the ease cycle, where effort ordinarily leads to achievements. Achievements create personal satisfaction, and that satisfaction inspires future effort. Burnout is an interruption of one or more links of this cycle. And the key to understanding, reversing, and preventing burnout is to understand and accept your personal feelings and motivations. You will beat burnout by judging for the win. In other words, by making sure that your efforts are in service of achievable goals, which are sufficiently aligned with your desires, that their accomplishment will lead to future hard work. And that is all of the material that I had prepared for today. I'd like to open it up to any questions or comments that we might see in the chat. If you have questions or comments that you would not like to share with the chat, you could email dave@judgingftw.com, and I will do my best to respond to those. You could also direct message me here on Discord for at least the next couple hours. I should be available on there to take a look at that.